Okay, take two. Welcome to the Shir in Pirkei Avot, and we're doing chapter 1, Mishna 14, in memory of the giant of a man, late Eric Samson, Olav HaSholem, of blessed memory, Rabbi Zriel ben David. And as you all know, Mishna and Neshama are the same letters, so by studying the Mishna, that part of Torah, we are able to hone in and bring an aliyah, an ascent, an additional peace, blessing, and bliss to the neshama of Azriel ben David. It is my honor and privilege to deliver this short shir of only one Mishnah, and it is my honor and privilege to do it in memory of Eric, whom I knew, and in honor of the family, all the family members who I know, to Sheila and Dorothy and Jeffrey and Frankie, children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. And let us begin. So today's teaching, today's Mishnah, is from the legendary Hillel, who is one of the leading teachers in Pirkei Avot in the Ethics of the Fathers. And this particular Mishnah is a very famous one. Even individuals who don't study that much Torah are familiar with this Mishnah. It is the famous line, Im ein ani li, mi li. If I will not be for myself, who will be? And Hillel continues, Uchshani la'atzmi ma'ani. But if I'm only for myself, what am I? Sorry. What kind of person am I if I'm only concerned about myself? I have to look after myself, but I cannot look after only myself. V'imlo achshav eimatai. And Hillel concludes by saying, and if not now, we're not going to approach life with this perspective, eimatai, when then? So the simple meaning, according to the commentaries, is that Hillel is actually speaking about our spiritual well-being. Who will inspire me if I don't seek to inspire myself? I can't wait around with folded hands for someone to come and lift me up and give me a dose of revelation and an epiphany and inspiration. Don't rely on other people to do it. You have to go and find inspiration yourself. There's plenty of sources of inspiration out there, but you must go and find it. On the other hand, we mustn't be satisfied with our own spiritual growth. We should help others spiritually as well. But of course, it would seem to be very good wisdom and teaching in practical life, in physical, material life as well, not only in spiritual life. If I don't look after myself materially, physically, financially, who will? I mustn't allow myself to become a welfare case, a charity case. I have to go out there and find a way, find a job, start a business, do something. Don't sit around waiting for manna from heaven. On the other hand, I mustn't think of myself exclusively. I have to reach out to help others as well. So on the one hand, and of course, you know, that's why rabbis have two hands, so we can say on the other hand, on the one hand, we must take care of ourselves, our family, our immediate sphere of influence and responsibility. On the other hand, a man wrapped up in himself makes a very small package indeed. So there has to be this healthy tension between independence and interdependence. A balance, a fine balance. You know, if we look at the story of Genesis, man and woman were created the very last of all God's creations. And the Talmud gives us one reason that says, because God deems man and woman the most important pinnacles of his creation, and therefore everything had to be laid on for them first. It was all there like a set table. The sun and the moon and the stars and the fish and the animals and the grass, the whole world was there ready. And then the grand entrance, the grand finale, Adam and Eve. So everything could be laid on for them. On the other hand, says the Talmud, man and woman were created as single entities, unlike all the other animal species which were created in herds. There wasn't one Elsie the cow, there was a whole herd of cows. And so too with the frogs and everything. But when it came to humanity, which is indeed the pinnacle of God's creation, one man, one woman, to teach us, let no one say, my ancestors are better than yours. My yichus, my pedigree, my family tree is better than yours. No. We all come, every one of us comes from Adam and Eve. We are all equal. You are unique, I am unique, he is unique, she is unique. We're all unique, just like everyone else. We're all unique. And therefore, we have dual responsibilities, both to ourselves and to humanity, says Hillel. My saintly teacher, the Lubavitcher Rebbe of righteous memory, was not content for his students to sit and study Torah themselves for years and years, although it's the greatest value, Torah study. He insisted that his students, after their required number of years of study in the yeshiva, and perhaps maybe 2 years studying in the kollel, postgraduate, he insisted that the time would come that they must now go out and teach the Torah they learned to the world, to others, to communities around the Jewish world. And indeed, his students are around the entire world doing just that. Even Jacob, our forefather, the patriarch Yaakov Avinu, we read when he was over 20 years in the house of Lavan, his swindling father-in-law, eventually he comes to the point where he says, Matai eseh gam ani leveti. When am I going to look after my own house, my own family? I can't just make Lavan rich. I have to look after myself. I have wives, I have children, I have grandchildren. And so, I once had an argument with a neighbor of mine who claimed to be an atheist. Of course, atheists say they don't believe in God, but we don't believe in atheists. We believe that every Jew believes. But this fellow claimed to be an atheist, and he said, God helps those who help themselves, which he thought was a proverb supporting his idea that we don't rely on God, we got to do it ourselves. I said, you know what? In my opinion, God helps those who help themselves is quite a religious statement, very much in keeping with Jewish theology, philosophy, and thought. We believe in miracles, but we're not allowed to rely on miracles. And God does help us, but he helps us when we do something to help ourselves. The Torah says, God will bless you in all that you do. You have to do something to merit God's blessings. You have to create a network. You have to create a net, a receptacle, a receiver, a vehicle, a conduit for the blessings from Hashem, whether it's a job or it's a business or it's some effort on our part to bring down that blessing. So God helps those who help themselves is not anti-religious. It's quite true and quite in keeping with our religion. So basically, Hillel is teaching us in this Mishna to lead a well-balanced life, looking after ourselves, being responsible, looking after our immediate family and those who look to us for their support, as well as reaching out beyond our own to the wider community and to help others. Now, I understand that Hillel has to teach us not to be selfish, but to look after other people. That's something we have to be taught. By nature, man is selfish. Just look at a child playing. They're not interested in sharing. We have to teach them that sharing is caring and all those things. We have to train our children and grandchildren to be caring. But the natural default position is that we're selfish. We have to be taught to be unselfish. Most of us anyway. Someone like Eric was an exception in his unselfishness. But generally speaking, we don't need to be taught to look after ourselves. We need to be taught to look after others. So I understand that Hillel has to teach us the second part, if I'm only for myself, what am I? But why the first part? If I'm not for myself, who will be for me? Do people really need to be told to look after themselves? We need Hillel for that? And perhaps the answer is that sometimes we do. Because the fact is that most people need to be reminded to be concerned about others, but some people definitely need to be reminded to look after themselves and their own. I know a guy who is a wonderful fellow. He helps the whole world. He is Mr. Fix-It in the community. Anybody needs help, he's there. Anybody needs a hand, they call him. Whatever it might be, he's a jack of all trades, and he's a wonderful guy, Mr. Nice Guy himself. And he's always there to lend a hand to people, and it's fantastic. One day I spoke to his wife. His wife says, I wish I could get him to clean his study. So what do they say? He's there for everybody, but in his own house, nobody's home. So some people look after the whole world, but they don't necessarily pay that same attention to their own immediate responsibilities. I remember being caught in traffic once in Manhattan many years ago. It took a long time to get out of this gridlock. And eventually when we did, I saw what the cause of the traffic jam was. There was a demonstration in progress. The demonstration was to save the whales. Now, I really like whales. I have a tremendous respect for whales. I would never start up with a whale, I promise you. But I looked at some of the characters waving their posters and placards to save the whales. And I looked at one young lady, and it looked to me like maybe her last bath was about a month ago. And she looked terrible. And I felt like rolling down the window and saying, lady, never mind the whales. Maybe you should look after yourself. So some people do need to be told to stop saving the world and save yourself and save your own. And therefore, Hillel teaches us to have the healthy balance. And the third part of Hillel's Mishnah is ve'im lo achshav eimatai, and if not now, when then? Some old-fashioned line goes, defer not tomorrow to be wise, for tomorrow's sun may never rise. Too many people have died before they got around to doing something very important that was on their mind to accomplish. As the fellow once said, I intended to procrastinate, but I never got around to it. That's why in my own work, when something comes up and I'm asked to do something, I try to do it immediately, because I know if I put it off, it may be put off on the never, never plan. So I try to do it immediately so that it gets done. The sages of the Talmud taught us, Shuv yom echad lifnei mitatach. Repent one day before you die. Sounds easy. Enjoy the good life and eat, drink, and be merry. And one day before you die, then you'll do teshuvah. You'll go to shul and you'll klap al chet and you'll say sorry to God and you'll make peace and you'll go to heaven. There's only one problem, and that is that nobody knows when that day is. Just today, I got a call that there's a funeral on Sunday from somebody who I was not expecting to die. He died suddenly, had a heart attack. So therefore, the advice of the Mishnah is to repent one day before you die, meaning to be in a perennial state of teshuvah, of living a life of goodness and godliness always. Not a beautiful take, an alternative interpretation on a line in the Chumash. The Torah says, "Mipnei seva takum," you should rise before the elders. You're sitting on a bus, you have a seat, and an old woman comes on, stand up and give her your seat. That used to be the ethic. Today, it's not so taken for granted, such a value system. But the Torah says you should rise before the elders. And I saw a very cute alternative interpretation. Mipnei seva, before you become an elder, before you get old, takum, rise up, get up and do what you have to do before you're too old to get it done. There's a lovely analogy which is attributed to the great Chofetz Chaim, Rabbi Yisrael Meir HaKohen Kagan of blessed memory, who was one of the preeminent rabbis of pre-war Europe. And although it doesn't sound like something the Chofetz Chaim would say, I have seen it in writings attributed to him. And it goes something like this: life is like a picture postcard. Now, the younger members listening probably don't know what a postcard is, or what an aerogram was. Did the younger generation ever write a letter and put it in the post box to be sent across the sea with the post office? Post office is becoming pretty much a relic these days. Email and WhatsApp have replaced the post office. Snail mail. But once upon a time, there was post, there was mail. And there was something called postcards, which were not a letter in an envelope, but just a postcard. And a picture postcard had a beautiful picture of the beautiful scenery of this place where you are, this city, this town, this holiday destination, whatever it might be, the seaside or the mountains, wherever you found yourself. And on the other side, so one side is the picture, a beautiful picture of where you are. The other side was divided into two. One side is for the address of where it's being sent to. And the other side, you had enough room to say, wish you were here, thinking of you, love, so-and-so. Chofetz Chaim says life is like a picture postcard. And what happened with the picture postcard, and I've experienced this myself, and I'm sure some of our more mature listeners have had the same experience, is you're on holiday, you're on vacation, and you buy a picture postcard to send to someone, and you start off saying, wish you were here, it's beautiful. And then you think of something else you want to add, something personal, a message, whatever. And one thing leads to another, and you start writing, and then you have another thought, and you start writing some more. And before you know it, you're out of space. And then you start, your scroll from becoming a big font becomes a smaller and smaller and smaller font until you're writing tiny, tiny font size. And you still don't have room, and you still more you want to add, and you find yourself going around the edges of the postcard. By the time the person receives it on the other side, it looks quite interesting, this postcard. That's something that has happened to many people. Says the Chofetz Chaim, life is just like that. In the beginning, in the early parts of our lives, we live flamboyantly. We're very liberal with our time. We're not worried about not having enough time. And then it comes to midlife. And there's so much more we want to get done with our lives, so much more we need to achieve, we want to achieve, so many more aspirations. And we're getting worried. I'm already in middle age. Maybe this is what midlife crisis is all about. And we start scrambling desperately to achieve the things that we've put off by living a more relaxed life for the early years. And just like there's sometimes not enough space on the postcard, sometimes there isn't enough time in our lives to get everything that we hope to do done. And so Hillel says, in lo achshav, if not now, when then? When it comes to doing good, we should never delay. I once heard a cute idea about why we don't say a bracha, a blessing, on the mitzvah of tzedakah, charity. Now, tzedakah is one of the most important mitzvahs in the world. The Samson family are experts at that. And we put on tefillin, we say a bracha, we light Shabbos candles, we say a bracha, we shake a lulav, we say a bracha. Why, when such an important mitzvah of tzedakah comes to us, we don't say a bracha before we observe and perform the mitzvah? And I heard a very interesting answer. What happens if you're a religious person, before you do a mitzvah, you want to prepare yourself accordingly? So you wash your hands, put on a yarmulke, a kippah. If you are very religious, you will spend some time meditating before you do the mitzvah. If you are more religious, maybe you'll put on a jacket, maybe a hat. If you're a chassid, maybe you'll put on a gartel around your waist. If you're a really holy guy, maybe you'll say, wow, this is such a holy mitzvah. I have to prepare myself spiritually. I have to go to the mikveh before I can observe this mitzvah. While you're doing all these wonderful spiritual preparations before the mitzvah of tzedakah, the poor, hungry man who just rang your bell and asked for some food might starve to death. So there's no bracha on tzedakah. Don't delay it. You get requested, do it, and do it now. And that brings me to late Eric of blessed memory. I think Eric probably didn't realize it, but he was an outstanding student of the great Hillel of the Mishna. He practiced that healthy balance in his own life. He took care of himself, Sheila, his children, his grandchildren, his great-grandchildren. He was there for his family, for his community, for his country, for his people, for Israel, for the wider community, for the world. I had the privilege of interacting with Eric over the years on quite a few occasions. If I'm not mistaken, the last time we spent any meaningful time together was in Cape Town some years ago at the Miracle Drive dinner at the Cape Sun. And I was a guest speaker at that dinner, and so was late President F.W. de Klerk. And Eric and I and de Klerk and Raymond Ackerman were seated at the table with our wives. And I was fortunate enough to be seated next to Eric, and we chatted quite a bit that evening. And it has been said many times, so I don't have to repeat, but we all know that when it came to tzedakah, Eric was nothing less than a legend. But to me, his greatness was not only his phenomenal generosity, but that he emulated Moses, the great Moshe Rabbeinu himself, the greatest prophet of all time, the greatest leader of all time, is also simultaneously described in the Torah as Anav Me'od Mikol Adam Asher Al Pnei Ha'adama, the most humble man on the face of the earth was Moses. I would say that Eric's greatness is not only his success, his generosity, but coupled with that was his humility. Astounding and absolutely remarkable that people who was so enormously successful should still be so humble. I think we all know people with a fraction of Eric's wealth and a fraction of his good deeds who are still much more arrogant than he could ever be. People who throw their weight around and would never give time to ordinary people. Not so Eric. An extraordinary combination of success and humility. And I know that his family are following in his footsteps and emulating his sterling example. So that is the Mishnah, and I pray that all your good deeds, the Samson family, as ours, in memory of Eric, should bring his neshama a beautiful aliyah and may his precious soul rest in peace in Gan Eden and paradise on high. May he continue to advocate for his family, for Sheila, Dorothy, Jeffrey, Frankie, and the whole mishpacha, the ganze mishpacha, his community, his people, Israel, and all of us, until we are all, please God, reunited with the coming of Mashiach. May it be imminent, please God. Thank you very much.